Welcome to Doctors Unbound, your show devoted to doctors who are, well, unbound by physician stereotypes. Get a behind-the-scenes look at doctors that are breaking the mold and breaking into the worlds of technology, writing, investing, politics, just to name a few. This is Doctors Unbound, where you'll hear from experts with the insights to help you go to the next level. Let's get this show started. Here is your host, Dr. Dave Draginas.
Hey there, welcome to the next episode of Doctors Unbound. This episode is unique in that my guest is both a biomedical engineer and he's a senior editor, writer for Medgadget. But before we get into all the juicy topics we discussed, I want to tell you about an opportunity that has recently become available. Now, some of you that have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that 2018 is all about taking action and improvement for me. Well, White Coat Investor, who was a guest on this podcast not too long ago, you can check out his episode. It was called Financial Inception, has come out with an awesome financial course. It's called Fire Your Financial Advisor. Pretty good title, I think. Now, this course is not going to be for everybody. So if you already know everything there is to know about financial advisors, insurance, student loans, different investing accounts, estate planning, asset allocation, just fast forward through this part of the podcast because this course is not for you. Or if you don't want to know if your financial advisor is really doing a great job for you or is screwing you over, then don't get this course. But if you are a doctor or another high-income person and you either want to learn enough to take care of all your financial matters yourself, or you want to better understand the job that your financial advisor is doing for you, then this course is for you. Now, I've taken several courses myself just in the last year, and two of those courses cost $1,500 and $800 respectively. And you know what? They were a bargain. Because rather than spending countless hours trying to find out where all the relevant material is online, a course has it all ready for you from A to Z. At the end of the course, of this particular one, you will understand about your student loans, what insurance products you need at the best possible price. You'll understand all the different investing accounts you need. Not only that, you'll know how to protect your assets and protect the interests of you and your family. You will accomplish this through a series of videos, quizzes, and worksheets that you just follow one by one to the next. No searching for the right information. It's all right there in front of you. So how much is a course like this worth to you? I've happily paid, like I've said, $800 and $1,500 for courses just in this last year. Well, Dr. Jim Dolly's course, I think, is a steal at $499. This is a premium course that can save you thousands of dollars. And Dr. Dolly has made it no risk because he offers a 7-day money-back guarantee with this course, no questions asked. Now, I want to be very transparent with you. I am all about transparency. So if you do buy this course through my link, it will cost you the exact same amount of money, but I will get a small referral fee for that. Having already had access to this course beforehand and having met Dr. Dolly personally, as well as interviewing him for the podcast, I can recommend this course without any kind of hesitation or reservation. But I still would like to sweeten the pot a little bit for my listeners here on this podcast. So if you buy the course through my link, and the way to do that would be to buy it through my site, you would go to my show notes page at doctorsunbound.com. Like I said, if you buy it through my site and through my link, just send me an email. My email, very simple, doctorsunbound@gmail.com. and let me know that you bought it through my link, and I will give you a free 20-minute Skype coaching call with me. You can pick my brain about just about anything you want. You want to know how to build a podcast? You have any questions related to the actual financial course and financial topics within the course? You want to know how my Airbnb rental is doing or some of my other real estate investments? Whatever you want, obviously within limits, you can ask me in that 20-minute coaching call. But I can't have this bonus offer going on forever. You know, these podcasts, some people might be listening to it way in the future. So the free Skype call, the bonus, is only available if you buy the course and email me by March 1st, 2018. The course will probably still be available after that, but not this particular bonus. So without any kind of reservation, I can just encourage you, go get the course. Save thousands of dollars, get educated on these important financial topics that doctors just too often are not educated on, and then book that Skype call with me. I would love to talk to you. All right, that went way longer than I anticipated it going, so let's move on to the podcast at hand. Well, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest, and I felt so pumped after doing this interview. Scott not only is in the Bay Area and has his fingers on the pulse of the health tech scene, he is also enrolled as a volunteer in Google's baseline study. If you don't know what that is, he shares that story in the podcast. We also talk about what it was like to graduate as a bioengineer in 2009 when the economy was collapsing. And we also talk about what it's like to work with physicians at a healthcare startup where he currently works. I won't keep it any longer. Here it is, my interview with Scott Jung. Welcome to another episode of Doctors Unbound. Today's guest is a fellow biomedical engineer, and he's also a fellow Trojan. He's been a senior editor at Medgadget and also works for a health tech startup. Scott Jung, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thanks for having me on, and fight on.
Yes, definitely. You might be the first Trojan I've had on, so yeah, that's definitely cool. We'll start by getting to know you a little bit better. So could you please tell us a little bit about your educational background and the kind of work that you've been doing since graduation?
Sure. Well, as you already mentioned, I went to USC for school. I have a bachelor's in biomedical engineering from the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. That was back in 2009. I got that degree. Right now, I'm actually pursuing a master's in medical product development management at San Jose State University over here in the Bay Area. So I'm hoping to get that in about a year or so. When I graduated in 2009, that was kind of at the peak of the recession. So I did a lot of odd jobs for about 4 to 5 years. At one point, I was doing contract chemistry work for a drug startup. I interned for Rock Health, which is a very well-known digital health venture VC fund here in San Francisco. I even worked at the local Apple store for a couple of years just to keep myself busy. But they were all really great experiences. I learned a lot of both skills that are relevant directly to the health industry and also, customer service skills and people skills. Eventually, I landed a full-time job as a technical services engineer at St. Jude Medical, which is now owned by Abbott. They have an office for their cardiac rhythm management devices, their pacemakers and defibrillators. Worked there for a few years as a technical services engineer, helping out customers, doctors, nurses, clinicians, our sales reps, patients, and then moved on to a device startup called Vital Connect. And during, that period of kind of perpetual unemployment, I also got the opportunity to write for Medgadget. And from my work at Medgadget, I've had the opportunity since to write about medtech for a number of different clients. I've written for Intel, I've written for Philips, I've written for a magazine called Innovation and Tech Today. And I occasionally appear on Twit TV, which is a tech-focused online television network that produces a lot of video and audio podcasts. And I appear on there and talk about medical gadgets. So it's really great that I get to work for a medical device company kind of during the day as my 40-hour job. And then I can still moonlight as a medtech journalist.
Very cool. Quite the extensive background there. Did you always know you had an interest in writing? Because, not to generalize, but sometimes engineers aren't as interested, in writing or journalism or things like that.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I think in high school, definitely, and certainly in college, writing was not my strength. I didn't particularly enjoy it. Back then, we had a couple of required writing classes, and of course, all of our liberal arts classes had some sort of essays that you had to write. But I think the fact that I get to write about topics that I enjoy. I get to write about topics on my own time. Mm-hmm. Of course, it helps I get paid for them.
Sure.
That makes the job fun, and I think I've definitely grown in my writing skills. And I guess I'm good enough that people, ask me to write for them about medical technology. So it's been great. It's been an interesting process there.
Cool. Was that something that was difficult to break into? I know there's a lot of doctors who are interested in writing or medical writing. Was that difficult for you to break into those types of jobs?
Not really, I don't think. I think for Medgadget, I'm just really grateful. Their founder, Dr. Michael Ostrowski, he's a cardiac anesthesiologist in Oregon. He really gave me a chance, an opportunity to write. He knew nothing about me. Other than the fact that I, studied biomedical engineering and was looking for a job, and he gave me the opportunity to really hone my writing skills. So overall, I mean, I think, if you have some sort of writing background, if you know how to write, if you know grammar, if you know spelling to a certain extent, that definitely helps a lot. And all the rest is just kind of you gain from experience.
Gotcha. Now you're in the Bay Area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a ton of great food and drink there. Is there something that's a favorite for you?
You're right. There's a lot of food here, a lot of great food, very diverse cuisines everywhere. But for me, if I had a last meal, it would probably just be a plate of fried chicken. I'm pretty easy going like that. Give me some fried chicken, some chicken wings. I'm happy.
Very good. And how about a hobby that you like to do when you're not working?
I think lately I've been enjoying exploring the Bay Area on my bike or on a hike. One thing I really love about the Bay Area is there's a lot of really beautiful trails around that have pretty much any kind of scenery you'd want. You can hike along the beach, along the ocean. You can drive another hour into the mountains and hike along there. You could visit the forests and the redwood trees. You could even take, more urban hikes through San Francisco or San Jose and enjoy the unique architecture of the cities in the Bay Area. So just the varied amount of scenery you can witness on your bike or on a hike is just amazing, and love doing that.
Well, that's awesome, and it's also good for you to get that exercise either on bike or hiking.
Absolutely.
Now, you were a senior editor for Medgadget, and you also worked for some other kind of digital health tech sites, writing for them. What are some trends that you've seen in health tech that physicians should be aware of into 2018 and beyond?
Yeah, I think the big one that they're going to be seeing is the entry or the rise of big tech into digital health. I think most people are well aware of Apple already. The Apple Watch obviously is a great fitness tool, and now they've got this Apple Heart study. They're using the Apple Watch's optical heart rate sensor to see if they can detect atrial fibrillation from there. You've got Google also. They have a whole life science division or separate company. Mm-hmm. They just started this massive study called the Baseline Study, which I'm actually a part of, where they're going to take like 10,000 subjects from all over the world, I think eventually, collect their data, their steps, their heart rate, things like that, and kind of like establish a baseline of health. What does the average person's heart rate look like? Or what is the average, African-American person's heart rate or Asian-American person's heart rate? They're going to use all that data and try to find health information from there. I think next, all eyes are kind of on Amazon next. What are they going to be doing in digital health? I read somewhere that they recently hired a physician to join they're bored. So, it just adds to the suspense on what Amazon is going to try and do to kind of disrupt the industry. And, from there, many of these big tech companies that didn't start in health, I think we're going to start seeing more applications in things like artificial intelligence and cloud computing, and just those technologies being used to discover more insights about our health. I think another trend that we'll probably be seeing more and more is the shifting of healthcare into the home. Every year I think I see there's more and more wearables and sensors and apps and devices available for patients to use to track their health. And I think, if these devices are used properly, these could empower patients to become more educated about their own health and, possibly create more effective self-treatments to an extent. Now, obviously, this won't replace doctors. They aren't meant to replace doctors, but I think a consequence of that is that it'll allow doctors to spend more time caring for, the patients who need it most, the patients with the more unique health issues. So, you might have less, in-person visits by patients who have, say, just a really bad head cold. And, even in those situations, we're going to have telemedicine technology to allow those types of visits to start remotely. And so in a lot of ways, obviously, that's going to be better for the patient because they can start their doctor visit in the comfort of their home or wherever they are. And it'll probably also be good for the doctor as well, being able to do all this remotely.
Absolutely.
And I think,
go ahead.
And I think kind of the third trend that's kind of related to that is, doctors, I think, are going to start seeing more patients bringing more data from their wearable devices. So I think they're going to have to kind of brace themselves for this onslaught of data. Now, obviously, this is kind of a double-edged sword. One in the sense that it might actually help doctors, identify additional health issues in their patients. But obviously, you're going to have to also sort through a lot of noise. You're going to have to be prepared to explain to a patient, like, what does all this data mean? Why is it relevant to you? And why should you be concerned? Or, like, why shouldn't you be concerned? So I think those are some trends that we're going to be seeing over the next year or so.
I think it's going to be very interesting. And going back to that baseline study that you were talking about and kind of tying into a lot of these points is, like you said, there's going to be a lot more data. And in the past, you go to the physician and you get a set of vital signs, and that's kind of, just a snapshot picture at that point in time of what that might look like. But like you were saying, with these wearables, people are going to be tracking all these vital signs kind of 24/7, 365, and it's a data issue, right? How do you process all of that data and make something meaningful out of it? And like you said, that'll help clinicians, it'll help physicians sort through things once that data piece is figured out. But it does give a lot of these big tech companies, it's a little bit scary to think that they're going to have all this data.
That's true. I mean, for example, the Verily baseline study that I'm a part of, this is a 4-year study. So they gave me this watch that can track, my heart rate and a bunch of other things. I have to wear it pretty much every day for the next 4 years. I'm also sleeping on one of their mattress sensors that will help kind of track how I'm sleeping. So yeah, that's 4 years of data. And, I'm also going to be taking surveys. I've got to let them know if there's a significant change in my health or even a big significant life event, like if I get married or have a kid, because they're going to try and take all that data and kind of look at the context of it. How do certain factors, like if I were to come down with cancer, how does that affect, the heart rate and all the different vitals that they're tracking?
They're going to try and correlate it maybe to different stressors in your life too, it sounds
exactly.
like.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Now, they must incentivize you some way to be able to give them all that data. Is how does that work?
Yeah, they do pay me. So I do get paid for every annual visit where I come into the research center and take a bunch of tests. I'm also compensated a little bit for taking surveys and other things like that. But of course, you'd want to participate in the study ultimately for what they call like the good of humankind.
Absolutely.
Contributing your data to health, contributing your data to finding discoveries about human health, finding cures to some of our biggest diseases. That's really the motivating factor that they at least market on their website. And I agree. I think that's a worthy cause.
No, absolutely. We go through medical school, and we have the cadavers, that we dissect, and it's somebody who's donated their body, for the furtherance of of science and medical study, and we have ceremonies for that, and we're very thankful for the people that did that. And it's kind of cool in a way, because this is a way to contribute without having to make that kind of sacrifice, but you're still making sacrifices while you're alive. So that is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison to make to cadaver, but it is true. It's similar in a way.
You also work for a company, I believe it's called Vital Connect. Can you tell us a little bit about what that company does?
Yeah. So let me start by saying, imagine that you're feeling symptomatic and you end up in the hospital for monitoring. Now, typically when you end up in the hospital, they're going to check your vitals. Things like your heart rate, your ECG, your temperature. And, as you know, each of these vitals requires, a separate device, sometimes adding up to a dozen wires and devices on your chest and on your body. And for a lot of patients, especially if they're elderly, if they're not, quite there, if they have some mental health issues, this could be, very uncomfortable and confining. And also, as you mentioned earlier, this is essentially like a spot check. You feel something, you go to the ER and they put stuff on you, monitor you for overnight or a day, and who knows, they might not even find out what's wrong. So what Vital Connect has developed is an adhesive wearable biosensor, and this biosensor is capable of continuously monitoring 8 vital signs in real time and transmitting all of that data wirelessly over Bluetooth to, say, a computer or a smartphone or some other device. So instead of having a bunch of wires on your chest, it's just a small patch that's applied to the chest, and it's got a battery in it, completely wireless, so a patient's free to move around while being monitored. And they could even wear the patch at home to be remotely monitored. They don't even have to stay in the hospital if that's what the doctor chooses. So I think it's going to change the way that physicians monitor their patients. One, because the patients have more independence, they can be at home where they're more comfortable, and two, they've got this continuous monitoring. It's not a spot check where they hope to find what's causing the symptom. They can monitor a patient over several days.
That sounds really intriguing. So one sensor on your chest, and are you getting blood pressure, heart rate? What are you getting from that sensor?
Yes, you're going to get heart rate. You're going to get a 1-lead ECG. You're going to get respiration rate, so your breathing rate, skin temperature. And it also has an accelerometer, which will help determine if you've fallen. And it can also tell your posture, if you're laying down or leaning or upright or walking. And of course, it has a pedometer as well to track the number of steps.
Gotcha. This is always intriguing to me because I'm an anesthesiologist, and I'm very familiar with all the wires because we monitor the patients all the time in the operative environment. And I've always said that if it doesn't have an IV component to it, it probably should be wireless. But of course, financial considerations and other issues, that hasn't happened just yet. How about your role? Like, what kind of stuff do you get to do within the company?
Sure. So my formal title is a senior application engineer. And in a nutshell, I'm kind of the bridge between our clinician customers and our research and development engineers. So I kind of translate the medical jargon from the doctors and nurses into the engineering speak for our programmers and our firmware engineers, so they can develop a great product for our customers, and vice versa, so that they can offer feedback to our customers. Of course, being at a startup, I wear a lot of different hats as well. So I dabble in all sorts of different areas, helping out with the clinical team, helping out with the regulatory guys, helping out with the programmers even. So that's the one thing I really love about the startup is you learn a lot of different skills, and you get to wear a lot of different hats, and it's always a very high-paced, exciting environment.
Very cool. And how far along is your product in its development?
So the company's been around for, I believe, about 5 years. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to check the website. We do have a patch on the market called the Vital Patch. It's available to a select number of customers, and the ways of getting the data off of that Vital Patch. And of course, we're developing other products as well that hopefully will be released soon.
Very cool. And now I noticed that there were some physicians that were associated with the company, either as advisors or, CMO of the company, things like that. Are there any tips for the types of skills that you've noticed that a doctor, would do well to serve on these kinds of roles?
Yeah, I can think of a couple. One, I think it all starts kind of with your attitude. You have to be thinking optimistically about technology. You have to be thinking critically about, what problems do you face daily in the clinic, in your practice, that technology could potentially solve. Now, these could be totally moonshot ideas. They don't really have to be fully fleshed out. That's what the engineers are there for, and the people with the money. But, I find that the most successful medical products start with like a real clinical need to be solved, a real problem. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where we need more input from doctors and nurses directly to really kind of provide the vision on, what to make next. I think the second tip, a little bit of advice I would say, is to learn some hard engineering skills. I mean, not really, really deep, but just the basics. Maybe some electrical circuit concepts, maybe the basics of a programming language or something like 3D modeling. For example, I'm really blown away by one doctor friend of mine about, how much we could talk about implantable defibrillator batteries. And that was all because his daughter had one recently implanted. And so he really took the time to research and learn about how it all works. And, me having worked at St. Jude, we were able to kind of talk back and forth and kind of understand each other and get all excited about defibrillator batteries of all things. So yeah, just kind of learning those really basic concepts. So you don't only come to the company kind of on a high level, like as a chief, as a manager, but you can understand when the R&D engineers, when the electrical engineers come and do their presentations on what they've been working on.
Okay, cool. Those are very good tips. And what excites you most about digital health or med tech, or kind of what you see on the horizon?
Yeah, so Medgadget recently got returned from Las Vegas. We try and cover the Consumer Electronics Show every year, and I think every year we see more and more convergence of health and medical technology with consumer technology. I mean, we see it first of all, obviously, with things like Apple Watches, wearable watches, wearable fitness bands, and stuff like that. But I think soon you're going to be seeing more and more health and medical related technologies and other devices, car technology, steering wheels, seats. Those are great places to monitor certain things. You'll see it in other smart devices, things like, refrigerators and laundry machines, who knows, home technology, lights, and, the sky's kind of the limit, but just kind of seeing that health technology, medical technology, it's not going to be its own separate device. I think it's going to be implemented in a number of different appliances and technologies that you use and see everywhere in everyday life.
Okay, cool. We're going to kind of start wrapping up the interview a little bit with some of these last few questions, and any resources that you would recommend for doctors or health professionals out there who are trying to stay current with this space.
Sure. Well, first, of course, I can't help but plug Medgadget.
No problem.
I think Medgadget is a great resource to stay current in medical gadgets and technology. Medgadget's probably one of the oldest sites. I think Medgadget started back in 2004, back when blogs were fairly new.
That is quite some time in blog age.
Yeah, but anyways, we report every day on different medical technologies, on a variety of topics, and on a variety of levels. We'll report on, I guess you could say, more mundane things like a catheter that got FDA approval. We'll report on, small projects that are being done in research universities that might not ever be commercialized. We'll do reviews on fitness trackers, on different consumer technology that you can purchase, at the drugstore, at your local Best Buy. And we'll report on health conferences. We've reported on TEDMed. Like I mentioned, we've reported on the Consumer Electronics Show. So we'll go to these conferences and we'll report back on, what people have talked about and kind of what's new and exciting. So medgadget.com is where to go for that. I think the second resource that I find is super helpful is Twitter. I think doctors should have a Twitter account and follow some of these major digital health influencers. The ones that come to mind, Christina Farr, she is the reporter for CNBC covering medical technology and business. There's a lot of doctors who are already excited about medical technology and tweet and speak very often. Birchie Mesko, Dr. Eric Topol, Dr. Daniel Kraft. These are all guys that I follow, and they not only tweet about like what's out there, but they also tweet about if it's any good. And being that they're physicians themselves, they know if anything's good or not. So Twitter is a great resource. And third, as I kind of already alluded to, consider attending a digital health conference. I think it's great that there's so many good ones out there and seems to be more every year. I already mentioned CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. There's a big conference here in Santa Clara called Health 2.0 in October. AdvaMed puts one on called the MedTech Conference every year in different places. There's one called Connected Health over in Boston. And I think even like the annual medical society meetings, the ones for all the different specialties, they seem to have more of a tech emphasis every year. So get involved in the conference scene. It's a great place to see, what's new that's out there and to meet people who are also excited about medical technology.
Definitely. Those are all great resources. And I think like you just mentioned at the end there, when you attend conferences, you actually get to connect with people in the space. And that's a huge bonus when you get to meet people face to face. You accomplished already so much, and you've already experienced so much in your career thus far. Is there anything that you wish you'd done differently?
I don't think so. I think I've, part of me always wishes that I didn't graduate in 2009. It was definitely a difficult time, and in some ways, I always imagine what would happen if I graduated earlier or later. But looking back on what I did in between graduation and finally getting the job at St. Jude, I got to do a lot of variety of different projects, work for a variety of different companies, gain a variety of different skills. I probably wouldn't have been able to write for Medgadget or even known about Medgadget or if I had gotten a job right out of college. So, looking back, even those hard times during the recession where I was unemployed and wondering what's going to happen with my life, I don't think I would want it any differently.
Well, you're to be commended for your hustle and your ability to make it through that. I was reading an article by an economist, and I think they called the people who graduated college around that time kind of like a lost generation, if you will. And they've done some economic studies, and unfortunately, a lot of the graduates from that time period have never really recovered because there's issues with, time gaps in their resumes, et cetera, et cetera. So it really was very difficult and eye-opening to me how difficult it was for these people for really no fault of their own. It was just bad timing.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, I think the key to that, if we have the next recession is be humble. Don't consider, working at a retail store to be below you. If I hadn't worked for Apple, I don't think I would have gotten the job at St. Jude. And if I didn't get the job at St. Jude, I wouldn't have gotten the job at Vital Connect because those people skills were so critical to both my job at St. Jude and my job at Vital Connect. So be willing to take advantage of every opportunity. And I mean, I think this goes for doctors as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Be willing to volunteer, to go out and see what's going on in other parts of the world to get those opportunities, because, I believe that every experience, there's a purpose and there's a connection to your skills and your ambitions.
For sure. Couldn't say it any better than that. We'll end with kind of a whimsical question. Is there one place that you would like to fly to tomorrow if there were no commitments and infinite resources?
Yeah, so I would actually love to fly to China. And the reason for that is twofold. One, China is my ancestral homeland. My great-great-great-grandparents came from China. And it's a country that I really haven't been to before. So it's one of those items on my vacation wish list. Mm-hmm. But also, on the medical side of things, China, I think, is probably one of the best places to visit for medical technology. Because in one country, not even one country, but like one province, like you could hypothetically visit, a rural village in South China, and you'll be able to identify the major health issues that these villagers have. And then you could travel a couple of hours to, say, a city like Guangzhou or Hong Kong, and then you can establish a business entity, and then you travel another hour to an industrial area like Shenzhen, and you could actually start manufacturing your product. So I think China is just a really interesting mix of different income levels and different industries and different cultures, and it's fascinating. So I'd love to go there and just learn a little bit more about the country and kind of experience it for myself.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought about it that way, but you're right. It's very unique from those different perspectives. Is there anything else you'd like to convey to our audience that we didn't cover?
No, I think that's everything. Thanks for having me on, and feel free to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @ScottJung. Feel free to get in contact with me if you have any questions or thoughts, or even if you want to pitch something for me to write about on Medgadget, I'd be happy to hear about what your ideas are.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show. We'll definitely link up to all those different resources, to your Twitter handle, and all those things in our show notes. Once again, thank you for being on Doctors Unbound.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for listening to Doctors Unbound podcast. Remember to head over to doctorsunbound.com to access all the show notes and resources discussed in this episode. Now, it's your turn to be unbound.